Welcome to Just Another Autism Podcast. In this podcast, I, Eileen Lamb, explore the personal journeys of people in the autism community, from autistic individuals navigating daily life to the caregivers, educators, and employers who support them. Each week, we shed light on the different ways autism shapes lives, offering first-person perspectives from every angle of the community. Today, I am so happy to be joined by Rob. If you're not familiar with Rob, you need to check out his Instagram account. He is at the Autism Dad. Rob is a father of 3 children on the spectrum, but he will tell you more about himself in just a minute. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Can you tell our followers and listeners a little bit more about yourself? I was just telling them that you're an amazing social media content creator and a father of 3 on the spectrum, but tell them more.
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you for having me. I'm always been a big fan of yours. And it's nice to have this chance to do this. So my name is Rob Gorski. I'm a single dad to 3 autistic kids. My oldest is 24. He just moved out like 2 weeks ago, so I'm still like adjusting to that. And then I have an 18-year-old and an almost 16-year-old. And, I started sharing our journey sort of inadvertently, kind of, because it was back in like 2008 or 9. I was struggling with the diagnosis, right? Like trying to process everything because my oldest son regressed. And so I was really struggling with that grief and that feeling of loss and things like that. And so I created this WordPress site that I thought was private because I had to sign in to, write anything. And I started just kind of dumping everything onto there like a journal. It turns out it wasn't private at all, and people started reading it. And it kind of springboarded me into this arena of public advocacy, and I've been doing it ever since. And it's very therapeutic for me. And, it seems to help a lot of people. And, my goal is for people to not have to go through things the way that I did back then, because there wasn't people talking publicly back then. It was all like you and I have talked before. It's like Rain Man clips on YouTube, or like, horrible clips of like meltdowns and institutions and things like that back then. I wanted people to understand that they weren't alone, and that there's other parents out there who are going through similar things, and that it's okay to feel the things that we feel and all that fun stuff.
And you do such a good job at that, making people feel less alone. I didn't know that story about your blog. I had a very, very similar story when I started sharing on social media. At first, it was just with my Facebook friends. So it was like 200 people. Then I made one post public that went viral. And that's what started my journey. But it was really like, I never intended to start that platform. And it just happened. And yeah, that is so crazy. Pretty much the exact story. And
it's funny how it works out. You and I think it's saved me, honestly, because without that outlet, without that ability to kind of put this stuff out there and then walk away from it and have something positive come from those negative feelings and whatever, I don't know that I would have coped as well with the last 23 years of my life as I have, as a result of that. So
yeah. Oh, I'm with you. I mean, there is good and bad on social media, but there is something about the community is that's a good thing that's happened in my life too, finding the people. I mean, like you and me who understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you were diagnosed with ADHD recently, right? It's been as an adult. And
2 years ago.
how was that? What was the experience like? And I mean, how do you manage the unique challenges of parenting 3 children on the spectrum while navigating like your own struggles? I assume there are struggles that come with ADHD.
Yeah. And 2 of mine have ADHD as well. And so that's a whole fun mixture. But like for me, like I've always had like depression and anxiety throughout my whole life. And I was always in therapy and on meds and stuff like that. And it never quite helped all the way. And no one ever suggested ADHD. But I started seeing other advocates for adult ADHD on social media, and they started sharing these symptoms of things that they were dealing with. And I thought, oh, that's me. And I thought they were talking about depression and anxiety and stuff. And it turns out it's adult ADHD. And I went, I found a doctor who was willing to evaluate me as an adult. And the process was, I mean, it's not hard, but it's frustrating because like it's designed to expose all those deficits, and so like I couldn't do some of the things that I needed to do to complete the testing because I couldn't focus and I couldn't, right? So I went through that whole process and was diagnosed with that. And I have the inattentive form, not hyperactive, but just everything else. And it's been a life-changing experience for me because I better understand why I am the way that I am. It makes my whole life make sense. Like everything came into focus once I realized this. Treatment has made a big difference in my life. I'm actually just today back on meds because I had about a 5-month period of time where I couldn't get refills. And it's like taking glasses off after you know that you need them. Like it's so hard to kind of deal with that stuff. But I work out. I've adjusted my lifestyle in order to um, provide me with the kind of stimulation that I need to stay focused and keep that dopamine going. Therapy has been super helpful. And, I think one of the biggest things is that I've become more aware of why I am the way that I am. And so I don't beat myself up like I used to. I'm more forgiving of myself. I give myself that grace to whatever. And I build my life around the way that I function. And, managing this stuff better has helped the depression and the anxiety to kind of be better managed as well. So it's been a positive thing, but it takes time to wrap your head around it. I was kind of struggling with that idea for a while.
And you know what you're sharing about how after your diagnosis, you feel that sense of relief and like your life is starting to make sense. I mean, I felt that with my own autism diagnosis. I was in my 20s and it was really like so eye-opening. And that's why I always encourage people. I know it's not easy like to get access to a diagnosis, but whenever possible, to go through that process. The way I did it was something called a therapeutic assessment, which basically at the end they tell you why you're struggling with the things you're struggling with. And so the answer might not have been autism. It could have been ADHD for me, like social anxiety, all of that ADHD turned out to be autism. But it's really good to not go into it with, I want a diagnosis of autism, or I want a diagnosis of ADHD, but to keep an eye open to, like, you're going to figure out why you feel different. And I think that's important. So there is a question I get asked often that I'm going to ask you with ADHD. Does having ADHD like help you understand, because you said 2 of your 3 children have a diagnosis of ADHD on top of autism. Does it help you understand their struggles related to ADHD better? And also, like, can you differentiate between like what's the ADHD and what's the autism? Because sometimes there's some overlap.
There's a lot of overlap, honestly. And, my oldest, my 18-year-old has a lot of social anxiety as well. And it's really hard to kind of parse these things because they're all interwoven. It's like remember old school headphones with like the wires and stuff, and you have it in your pocket and it's just this jumbled mess. And it's hard to kind of figure out what's what, because like you said, a lot of the symptoms overlap. For me, my form of ADHD is very similar to that of my 18-year-old. He's inattentive. He's not hyperactive. He doesn't have a lot of excessive energy, but he can't shut his brain off at night. So he has a hard time sleeping. He perseverates on things, can lose focus on things that are not, his focus, I guess, if that makes sense. It doesn't really capture his attention, and he bounces from thing to thing to thing, like I do, right? Disorganized, all that kind of stuff. So I better understand him now. My youngest, uh, he is all the hyperactive side of it, and impulsive, and he has all that kind of endless energy. And but I have a better understanding now, in a sense that like it was more of an abstract thing for me with them, just sort of like autism is for me with them. Like it's sort of abstract. Like I understand the concept of it, but I don't understand what it's like to be in their shoes. And even with me having ADHD, it's still different from like their experience is unique because everybody's different, but it does help me to better understand the importance of medication and, adjusting lifestyles so that you can better function and kind of creating an environment that helps you to be successful and whatever. So it's overtly been a positive thing. but like I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around some of the stuff as I go. I just kind of keep building, and trying to do better.
What are some things that you have learned from parenting three kids on the spectrum?
Uh, Geez, patience is probably the big one. Patience is a big one. Um, I don't I don't sweat the small things. If that makes sense. So like, I don't get angry or upset very easily, and I think that's a lot to do with my kids because they have shown me that there are so many more important things in life than the stuff that we tend to focus on a lot of times just in society. Uh, but my kids are brilliant and they're creative and they've overcome so many challenges, and I find it inspirational to see the things that they managed to do that they were maybe told they were never going to do. My oldest just moved out. He was told that would never happen. He's doing really well. He's been working for a year now. My youngest was non-speaking, was told he was never going to speak. Um, and he is doing exceptionally well. He's finished up his sophomore year, and we're looking at signing up for college classes for his junior and senior year to kind of double up. And Elliot, my 18-year-old, is creative and brilliant in his own way, and they've just taught me to appreciate the things in life that I think we often miss because we're moving too fast. Like we got to slow down and pay attention to a lot of that stuff. And it's been, they've made me a better person in every way, I think.
That's beautiful. And how do you make time for yourself? Like with having three kids, being a single dad, do you have any hobbies, anything that makes you happy?
Well, I'm learning as my kids have gotten older and they've gained more independence, it frees up more me time, I guess, if that makes sense.
Of course.
So going to the gym is a big thing for me. That helps with the ADHD and depression. It makes me feel good and I enjoy it. Um, Doing the advocacy stuff has become kind of my passion. So that's sort of something that I really, I really enjoy doing. So it's kind of like me time to be able to like do this right now and have a conversation with you. Um, I like helping people. That's sort of my driving force and things. Free time that I get outside of this, I spend it with my girlfriend and her kids and our family together and stuff. And you just kind of take it one day at a time and find those moments where I can sneak things in for myself. Like before we were talking, I spent probably the last half hour playing Minecraft, which sounds really dumb, but like it's an escape for me. Like I can just make everything the way that I want it. Nobody can mess it up. And it feels like I have control over things that I don't in real life. So stuff like that.
Do your kids play Minecraft too?
Yes. Oh yeah. We do that together. I play with Kelly's kids too. Like we all have a realm that we play together in and contribute and do all kinds of fun things together. It's fun.
Oh, that's nice. I need to get into it. I'm into Pokemon with Jude, but
Oh, there you go.
hard. I don't know why I find the game like really difficult to understand for some reason, but I'm sure once I get into it, I would really like it.
My girlfriend's daughter is 8. She is autistic, and I introduced her to Minecraft about 3 months ago, and she just absorbed it, and it's become this really amazing way for her to kind of express herself. And you get insight into the way that she thinks, which just blows my mind the way that she thinks. And it's a really cool experience. Stuart Duncan has that Outcraft, where he's built that safe Minecraft place for kids that are neurodivergent. There's a lot of positive things that can be found there.
Yeah, and there is a creative mode and another mode, right? And the creative mode is really the one that's good, I think.
Yeah, you can do anything you want. I mean, it's really,
Open-ended.
yeah.
No, it's cool. Do you how do you, I mean, I know you do get a little hate on social media, and there's a lot of misinformation these days, unfortunately, with the rise of social media, so many more people. And how do you deal with all of that? Because that's hard.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to a mom the other day, who is really struggling with some of that hate that they're getting online. And when I was first starting off, back in like 2009, like there was nobody else doing this stuff, right? So I kind of filled this vacuum, and there were people who really appreciated it, and then there's people who could not understand why I would say the things that I was saying publicly, like that you shouldn't talk about that stuff. Um, and I've had my share of death threats and, uh, you know, nasty comments and just hateful, angry people. It used to get under my skin a lot back in the day, and I had a block list that I was feeding constantly with new people to never see again. Now I just don't care anymore. Like, it doesn't really bother me. I recognize that, like, if people want to come on and they want to say horrible things, you know, if it's really bad, I delete it and block them. But otherwise, it tends to create conversation, and it brings people together in a weird way, because someone leaves a nasty comment about why I did something like this, then there tends to be, hundreds of people that'll come in and say, hey, they do it like this because it works for them, and it might not work for me, but it works for them, and everything is different, and people get to do what works for their families, and we don't judge, and it kind of gives people a chance to kind of, I don't know, kind of stand up for themselves, because I think everybody experiences that type of judgment, and being able to, speak up for somebody else, I think is really helpful. But most of the time, I can't keep up with comments most of the time. And the messages, I've got a backlog of thousands of them, and I'm really sorry to everybody who's messaged me. I just can't keep up with it. But I get cussed out and all kinds of stuff. I just don't care anymore. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I can relate. It used to really bother me at first, and I think it's normal. When something is new, it's gonna hit harder. But as sad as it is, I think I got used to it the same way you are, and now it's just like, yeah, brush it off. Whatever, they're gonna do what they gotta do.
If they bring my kids into it, or they bring my girlfriend or my family or something into it, that gets under my skin. But if they're just coming after me, I just don't care. I figure traffic is traffic, engagement is engagement. They're helping pay the bills, so you just bring it on, and we'll deal with it. So
There's no bad PR type of thing, right?
yeah. And I think it also highlights to people the challenges that we still have in this community, and how, by sharing our stories, and raising our voice and sticking up for each other, we're kind of pushing that judgment away, and normalizing this stuff, because it's normal. Normal, to share these things and to experience these things. And what's not normal and what's not okay are the people who are, shaming us, or casting judgment, or saying, hurtful things. That's the stuff that's not normal. That's the stuff that's not okay. What we're doing is helpful and positive, and, so anyway.
So what was your advice to the mom who reached out to you and who told you that she's having a hard time handling the social media criticism? Because I think a lot of parents are being pushed out of the discussion on social media, unfortunately. And I would love to encourage more parents to share despite the criticism, because we need that community.
Well, she's going to actually be coming on the podcast, and we're going to have a conversation about it. But, what I told her was, like, I mean, most of the time people are just saying things. No one's going to come to your house. Right. I mean, it's just a vocal minority of people who just, for whatever reason, feel like their opinions matter more than anybody else's, and they want you to know how they feel. But I just said, just, you have to let it roll off your back. Like, you can't take it personally, because they don't know you. Your presence on social media is only it's the tip of the iceberg to who you are, and people are going to judge what they don't understand. And the fact that there's people out there still doing that shows that we still have, work to do. And, some of the stuff she does is not specifically autism related, but it does touch on it. And she's dealing with a massive, like 1.5 million followers, like, and just getting that high volume of, like, just awful people that want to just bring them down. But it's a reflection on them. It's not a reflection on us. We just got to kind of learn to let it happen, and use it to our advantage. Use it to spark conversation about why what they said isn't okay. Copy and paste a comment, and respond to it. Not like trying to create turmoil or shame somebody, but, make it a teaching moment. I mean, everything can help us grow, and you just got to harness it and use it in a way that, maybe was unintended by the person who was trying to share that unsolicited opinion.
That's good advice. And, I do something similar is I started on my iPhone in a Notes app. I have some responses to comments I get the most often because sometimes, and not always, I mean, some people are just here to troll, but sometimes people are just like repeating what they're hearing and they could be open to learning and hearing another perspective. And it's pretty obvious when people are just like being mean for the sake of being mean and when there is a learning opportunity. So I started a document in my Notes app on my phone just with some comment answers to those comments because I don't want to have to type it in, and I'm not gonna just copy paste every time, but I think it's good. And even if the person who's wrote the comment initially is not open to learning, there are some people who are just like bystanders who are not commenting but who are seeing the response and who are then able to see both perspectives. So I think it's important to answer whenever possible. And you know what? I block people all the time too, but I think, a little bit of everything can be a good coping mechanism to those hate
There's
comments.
something therapeutic about like sending people to the block list.
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, you're not going to fight somebody or something like that. I mean, but it is a way of just shutting them up. I mean, because sometimes you can't reason with some people, and all they want to do is make you feel bad, and you got no room in your life for that. So just send them to the block list because they're not, it's just not worth your energy.
Yeah, no, totally. Especially when you can tell that they're just here to be mean, because I don't want to spend headspace and time trying to answer them. Like I can honestly, when I'm like answering people who make me really angry, I
Hmm.
can feel myself like I'm getting less patient, like with my own kids. And like if it
Yeah.
starts affecting my real life, it's straight to the block list.
And the other thing too is when we respond to that, I think we're helping other parents too, because a lot of parents, they follow
Mhm.
you or they follow me because they relate to us. And when someone says something negative about something I've said or done, or something about my life, or when they say something about your life, people can take that personally because they can relate to your life and they relate to your struggles. And it's like those mean comments are being said to them. And allowing, taking a stand and addressing those comments. And I do the same thing with the notes app on my phone. I copy and paste, or I save screenshots of stuff so that I can go back to it and use it as like a teaching moment for a reel or something like that. But I think that it's empowering for other parents too, to know that this is how you can respond to this, or if you run into this, this is what you do, and not let it bother you, and pick up and move on, because those are the people that have the problem, not us.
That's a very good point, actually. Never thought of it that way. But like if someone tells me you're abusing your son by having him in ABA, like other people who have their kid in ABA might take it
Yeah.
personally too. Yeah.
I mean, that's why it bothers me the most, is because like I know that I'm not doing something wrong, and I don't really care what anybody else thinks, but I also know the impact that those words have on other parents who are maybe those just silent observers, who are maybe really desperately struggling, and they hear or see something like that, and it's just enough that pushes them over the edge. I mean, we by addressing it, we can help to build those people up, and give them a voice, and kind of stand up for people who we don't realize are being impacted by that, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I will make a point to answer even more now that you said that. Do you have any advice for those struggling parents we were just talking about, like maybe parents who are overwhelmed, don't know where to go for resources, and like they don't have a support system? What can you say to them?
Yeah. So one of the big things that I've been telling people, and I just did a reel on it today. Um, when our kids get this diagnosis of autism, and you get this report that talks about all their deficits and all the challenges and all the things that they're not doing right, we tend to kind of take that and project that into the future, and feel like this is what life is going to be like forever. Our kids are, this is where they are, this is where they're always going to be. And so when we get that like piece of paper that has those phone numbers for us to call for resources, and we get sent out the door, like our whole world is imploded. And I think what's important for parents to understand, especially at the very beginning, is that that diagnosis is just a snapshot in time. It doesn't define who our kids are, or who they're going to be for the rest of their life. But it allows us to identify a need so that we can match it with a service. And if we get so hung up on that diagnosis itself, then we lose valuable time, and we pay attention to the wrong things. And our kids will always surprise us. Our kids will always do things that uh, they're told they're never going to do. And maybe they're big things, maybe they're small things, but there's always victories. There's always improvement, right? We just have to be open to what that is. And it doesn't mean it'll be without challenge, but the more that we, focus our energy on the things that we have control over, and we frame things in a way that is realistic and helpful, I think we're much better off. And when parents start off on this journey, having their whole world implode because they feel like it's the end of the world, that sets the tone a lot of times, and if we could empower parents and remind them that it's going to be okay, it's not the end of the world and you'll get through this and things will get better. Uh, I think it helps them to get off on the right foot, and talk about self-care and the importance of taking care of yourself and building your village and all of those types of things. And, I think we just have to, I think it's important that we build parents up, and remind them that they're allowed to feel the things that they feel. You're allowed to be frustrated and angry and resentful and jealous of other parents who maybe don't have to deal with those kinds of challenges, because you're human. It doesn't make you a bad parent. It doesn't define who you are. How you deal with it can define who you are. But, being human isn't a crime, and it doesn't make us bad parents. And our kids having challenges doesn't make our kids bad kids. It's just the reality that we live in. It's the world that we are existing in, and it's the journey that we're on. And if we get sucked into that despair and all that negativity, then it just kind of holds us down and makes things more miserable than what it needs to be.
Yeah. And that's something I also really try to emphasize on my own social media platform, is that you're allowed to feel sad and all of these feelings. What really matters is how you get out of it. Like, at some point you need to, help your child, right? And I think it's totally fine if, like, for a week at a time, like, parents can do anything, as long as, in the long term, like the big picture, they're doing right by their children. But I really don't like the narrative that, oh, you feel sad, you're a terrible parent, you
The
shouldn't
whole
be
grief
grieving
thing.
this. And
Yeah.
yeah, just like, come on, like, and they're not, the people saying that are not living that life, and you don't know how you would be feeling in that situation. We're not like enjoying, like, feeling sad. It's just, this is hard, and we should be allowed to feel sad and to say it and to share these things. There is just so much taboo around feeling sad, and that's one of the things that you do a really great job at, is like telling parents that it's okay to feel sad. And I'm really trying to get other people to accept that too, but it's difficult for some reason.
We all know there's a vocal minority of people who feel like uh if you grieve something after a diagnosis, that you're like, it's somehow like you don't love your kid or something like that. And that's not, like, everybody deals with things in a different way. Like I was broken with all three of my kids' diagnoses. Like, it hit me in a different way, but I struggled with each one of them, even though I'd already been through it before. But my oldest, uh I like, it was like he was taken away. Like, something happened around his fourth birthday that profoundly changed who he was. We didn't recognize him anymore. We needed to relearn who he was. He needed to relearn a bunch of skills, and he's never been the same. You know, I'm going to grieve that loss because I knew someone before it happened. My other two kids were born who they are. It was just who they were from birth. I didn't grieve that. It was just who they are. It's what I knew. But when a diagnosis hit, I struggled with that a little bit because I didn't know what it meant for them, and I don't want them to ever have to struggle. And you don't know the future. There's a lot of unknowns, but uh, grieving is just part of that process that we go through in order to be better prepared to deal with the things that are to come. I mean, it just is. And if we resist it and we try and, like, tamp that down, then we just add that guilt on top of the grief, and that affects us as parents, right? We can't choose up that bandwidth like you were talking about, and that's just, it's not a good option. So feel what you feel, just deal with it in a healthy way, get help, ask for help, take a break, whatever you got to do, but pick up and move on.
Feel what you feel. I think that's it. That's the advice. Thank you so much for sharing, Rob. And before we leave, do you want to share with people where they can find you on social media? And if there is anything special you're working on, it's your space to self-promote.
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity. The easiest way to find me, I mean, you can go to the autismdad.com and everything can be found there, but I created a mini site called the autismdad.link, and that takes you to the blog, social media, podcast stuff. I've created playlists of podcast episodes that center around specific commonly asked topics, to make it easier for parents as a resource. And I try to be as accessible as I can. And but there's only one of me, so I do the best that I can. And then current projects wise, I've started speaking, which is a new thing for me. I'm kind of challenging myself to do that and start saying yes to those. And working with Autism Speaks to help kind of bridge some gaps and build some community and bring some people together and help to disseminate factual information so that people can make informed decisions for themselves instead of being stuck in that echo chamber. And it's taught me a lot, actually, just in the short time we've been doing that. So,
and we're so thankful for your advocacy with us. So thank you again, Rob, and have a good one.
You too.